lot of you probably know Jon Caldara already. He's the president of the Independence Institute, which is a libertarian think tank out in Denver. His group has been behind some of the ballot initiatives you've probably seen. One of those actually resulted in the transparency that we saw at the Denver Public School contract negotiations between the union and the school board. There were cameras and there were people in the room that hadn't been there before, and that was all because Jon took the time to put something on the ballot that gave us sunshine into that. You may have also seen on the last ballot Proposition 110, which was fix our damn roads. It didn't end up winning, but it was there was a good philosophy behind it, and they are really pushing hard on some of those state level reforms. So maybe he'll talk a little bit about that. Maybe he'll talk a little bit about the Boulder gun ban also. As a Boulder resident, he is affected by that. And please, I hope you will join me in welcoming Jon Caldara.
Thank you. All right, thanks. So I've talked to this group several times, so I could just leave now, and I think we'll be okay. One of the things we did at the Independence Institute, of course, was fix our damn roads. The reason we did fix our damn roads was to stop a massive tax increase, and we did. The tax increase for all sorts of transportation projects, including rail projects and open space, and we didn't know what, went down by nearly 20 points. Instead of running a no campaign, we decided to run a yes campaign. One, to make sure the other one didn't do well, but also to offer an alternative, to say there's a different way of doing these things other than raising taxes. But what I thought I'd talk about is, usually when I'm with you guys, I talk about Tabor, I talk about transportation, I talk about all these nerdy things. I very rarely talk about myself, which is surprising because, damn, I love talking about myself. So I want to talk about guns for a little bit. When I was raised here in Colorado, I was raised in a pretty anti-gun place, a pretty anti-gun family. I wouldn't say it was an evangelical anti-gun kind of family, but you know, we weren't raised with guns. By the time they got to me, the parents were trying to be the good parents and saying, you know, now let's not give them toy guns. You know, and I remember getting a piece of wood and painting it silver with my model thing and made a little L out of it, and I thought that was pretty good. But we stuck in our cap guns. Point being, I wasn't comfortable with guns. In fact, I didn't like guns. When John Lennon was shot, it was a pivotal moment for me. I was just a teenager, and I felt pretty close to this guy, and it really set me over the edge. And I started giving money to anti-gun causes, including what's now called the Brady campaign, but it was called Handgun Control Incorporated back then. And I looked at these things and I was like, we need to get rid of these things. There is no reason that in a society like ours, people need to be armed to the teeth. Look what happens. And I looked at this thing and it was evil. So now, as I've moved to the other side, I have some insight as to how people feel about guns. And the most important thing to say about anti-gunnies is they don't want to be safe. They want to feel safe. That's the difference. And when I was a gunny, I would look at a gun and I saw not a gun. I saw hate. I saw ugliness. I saw things that could hurt people. It was, I think, what people see when they saw a swastika, or maybe now the Confederate flag. That it's something that has emotion. It is infused with something, and that something is evil and wrong and hateful and the opposite of what good people have. And I just know that the world would be so much better if we didn't have these guns. This is insane that you can just walk down and buy one. And so I was impassioned by this. Wore the button, did the whole thing. Even though I was pretty libertarian on almost every other issue you could imagine. And then, right out of college, my older brother Paul did something that I still haven't forgiven him for. He purchased a gun. He purchased one of the guns of choice for most drug dealers. It was a .22 rifle, for those of you who know. Those who are giggling know what it is. It's the gun they give you when you're 12 years old on your birthday if you live in Kansas, all right? It's what you do. It's the gun you use to shoot tin cans out in the fields with. And he bought this thing, and it blew my mind. I couldn't understand how in the world this sensible guy that I know, who was raised in the same family I was raised in, went off and bought this thing. And then he had the nerve, the ugliness, to actually bring it to my house. The thing could have blown up. The thing could have jumped around and killed people. It was awful that he brought this thing in. I thought he lost his ever-loving mind. And over a span of nearly 2 years, he took me shooting with it. And the first time he took me shooting with it, you know what it was? It was awful. It was terrible. He brought me to one of these indoor ranges. And we're there with our little .22 in one of the ranges, and there's some guy there with some sort of hand cannon that was shaking the whole place, and I knew for certain it was going to ricochet and blow my frickin' head off. It was awful. I was right, even though I went down this dark path with him to go experiment with shooting a gun. Over time, we ended up doing things. We actually took the gun apart. And we looked at the internal safeties. I didn't even know there were internal safeties in a gun. We looked at the external safeties. And then I started doing research. Now this was way back before the internet, so you had to do things like go to the library and make phone calls and talk to people. And it's one of the reasons I got to know Dave Kopel, who's now one of my dear friends. And slowly, like an iceberg melting, the emotionalism I had around guns began to drip away, so that I could finally look at this thing the way it was. It's a hunk of metal. It's no different than any other thing. And finally it occurred to me, this thing does not have free will. It does not have any sort of determination. It doesn't act upon its own. It is just an inanimate thing that so many of us gun haters have infused with personality. We've infused it with emotion. But it took me 2 years to learn that lesson. And then I ended up buying my own evil weapon, another .22 rifle, and now I have an arsenal and I'm a very happy man. And my big frustration with the gun debate are gun owners. God, I hate gun owners. Our job as free marketeers, as people who believe in individualism, is to sell this. Not to just get angry and try to protect what we have, but to sell this. Now, there's some 5 million NRA members. I'm a proud life NRA member. It took 2 years for me to switch over to become a gun owner, and then many years after that to go, I need to do something because I see the attack on my way of life. How many people are willing to take somebody and commit to a 2-year process to bring them over? If you're a gun owner, chances are you know somebody who's smart enough they should be one of us. Somebody who's rational on pretty much everything, but for some reason on this issue goes, I was that guy. Imagine if every NRA member found that one guy like me, and over the course of a couple years, brought him over. Could you imagine in the course of 2 years, doubling the size of the NRA, and what that would mean for all sorts of things? Let me go one step deeper. I believe something happens when you become a gun owner. Now, if you were raised with guns, and your father took you out shooting, this might not apply. But my philosophy of life is that we are individuals, and as individuals ourselves, we're sovereign creatures. We are, by nature's law, sovereign unto ourselves, and that a beautiful thing happens when we work together in cooperation, voluntary relationships. Something beautiful happens. People don't see it as a sacrament that they're selling this beer to me for $6. It is worth more to me than $6. To them, $6 is worth more to that. We make this trade. We both say thank you. And the utility of our lives, the pleasure of our lives both increase only because we're free to have this. Well, if we're free to be sovereign countries unto ourselves, we also have the natural right to defend ourselves. Not just to defend ourselves from somebody who wants to come and take my beer, and I will frickin' shoot you. But our homes, our families, and then that extends out towards us as a whole. The reason we are a country is because individuals had guns. I was talking to a buddy of mine in England, and he just said, oh, we're kind of jealous of you guys. That's why most Europeans hate Americans. We're kind of jealous of all the stuff you have and the freedoms you have. Although we think you're nuts with those guns. Why would anybody need all those guns? To which I said, well, it's handy when you want to get rid of an English tyrant. And they were like, that's a really good point. On an individual level, something happens when someone who is not a gun owner goes through that passage and finally gets gun curious and buys their first gun. There's something that changes in them. That is, I think all the other lessons we try to talk about as free marketeers, people who value and love individual liberty, I think all those lessons get amplified once that person makes that transition. There is an empowerment that happens when you get your first gun, particularly, I believe, with women. Women owning guns is one of the most empowering things I've heard of. That the great equalizer being this gun. But then something else happens, at least for a guy like me, which is you've now taken power of something that you were fearful of, and now you are the master of it. If I can be the master of something I was so fearful of, maybe I can be the master of other things in my life. Maybe I can be the master of my own property. Maybe I can be the master of my kids' educational choices. Maybe I could be the master of my own retirement. Maybe I could be the master of my own healthcare choices. There is something empowering that happens when you break through and you become that person. And that's what that gun did. Which is why I've had a personal passion to see what happens with things like concealed carry permits. We worked for years at the Independence Institute to bring concealed carry permits to Colorado. And amazingly, Dave Kopel's work did more to open up the possibility of concealed carry permits in other states before it came to Colorado. Now, before that, we had may issue laws. What that meant is you could go up to the government and go, may I please carry my own property with me for my own protection? May I please do this? And the sheriff would say, maybe, maybe not. If you're in Denver and you are a judge, the answer is yes. If you are somebody else, the answer is no, unless you are a very wealthy person and connected in the society. When we changed that to a shall issue, what that changed was, again, empowerment. If I meet these regulations, if I've passed the test, and if I have the training, you have to give me that concealed carry permit. Today in Colorado, 9% of all adults have a concealed carry permit. 9%. Now, pardon me for talking a little bit about politics. My suspicion is that person who has a concealed carry permit is going to feel a bit more threatened when somebody says, we'd like to take your gun away. Government shouldn't have that. Also, the same thing that's going to happen when somebody says, you know what, we should be able to take your property away for eminent domain. We should be able to do that. Wait, if you can't take my gun, why the hell can you take my property? And we're going to tell your kids that you can't have this education. Oh, and most importantly, we're going to take away your plastic straws. Because, remember, guns don't kill people, plastic straws kill people. All of that, by the way, coming from a video where some turtle has a plastic straw up its nose. And I'm thinking, we're going to outlaw straws in Colorado. None of our straws go to the sea. You know, either they get recycled or they go to a landfill. No turtle has died here because of a Colorado straw. Although I hate straws because, you know, straw killed my father. So I have to go. No, it's a bad joke. Oh, he's live. He's fine. I'm working on fresh material. That person, so 9% of us have concealed carry permits. Imagine what would happen if that got to 20% of us. Imagine if 1 out of every 5 people had a concealed carry permit. Imagine when you walk around someplace, what that would be like, knowing that there's somebody there who's trained. I don't know where there'd be a shooter. At Independence Institute, we started a program called FASTER. FASTER is a program to teach teachers how to be armed in schools. Now, this would have blown my mind in a previous iteration because guns would just jump out and kill people or somebody would wrestle it away and bad things would happen. We don't know this, but right now by Colorado law, any school district can allow their people to carry guns if they so choose. There are some 30 school districts that already do this, 30 of them. Now, they're mostly rural schools because it takes a while to get cops out there if something went wrong. But even if something happened in a school right next door, the cops wouldn't be there in time. The statistics are pretty clear. It all happens very quickly. And as the saying goes, when seconds count, the police are only minutes away. So now we are training teachers up to police standards. That is, they go through a 3-day intensive class. They have to get renewed all the time. It helps with the liability insurance. They do scenario drills, and they have to qualify at a higher level than a police officer going through the academy. Now, why are we doing all this? One, because it's our kids, and these are teachers who before, all they could do is throw their body between bullets and their children. And so we leave our kids in a place that is unprotected, completely unprotected. There's a reason we're doing this. Not only can it save lives, but you know the people down in that Capitol are going to try to stop this at some point. And the way you stop something is not wait until they come and take it away, but build up a constituency for when they try to do it. If they try to take away guns from these schools, there will now be scores of teachers who will be down at that Capitol saying, don't you dare make us no longer protect our kids. There will be people down there because that's the way we need to start thinking. Let me bring it to my hometown of Boulder. Boulder, when I went to school there, was a great place. It was hippy-dippy weird. I mean, it was weird, but it was truly tolerant. You could pack a bunch of guys in a house, and each one is paying $150 a month for rent, and everybody was a liberal, and everybody was groovy, but they left you alone. Boulder was the home to the hippie beatnik Naropa Institute, the university now, which was founded by Allen Ginsberg. And it was the founding place of Soldier of Fortune magazine with Colonel Bob Brown. It was the home of Paladin Press back before the internet. This was how the anarchists' cookbook and things like that. That's what they printed. This was Boulder. It was Be Weird. Boulder has changed since then to be Aspen, to be a bunch of elites who cannot stand that other people are living differently. And it has become the most intolerant place in the state. Now, Saul Alinsky was so dead on with his rules for radicals. One of his key rules was to hold your opponent up to his own standards. That is, if you're fighting some guy and he says, hey, I answer every constituent letter, a good radical would know, well, then we're going to flood you with letters, and we're going to force you to live up to those standards. In Boulder, I go to places, I go to my kids' schools, and I see no place for hate on the wall. I see things that say celebrate diversity. I see signs that say welcome in like 28 different languages. I have a different lifestyle. Now, if I were gay, man, they would be there for me. If I was Muslim, man, they would be there for me. God, if only I was a Muslim gay crossdresser, they would love that. Because they want us to be supportive of alternative lifestyles and things we don't understand, choices that people don't get. Today, I am now the alternative lifestyle. I own guns they think are bad. And they have turned me into a criminal because of this. They've outlawed what they consider to be assault weapons. And I don't know if you saw the little video I did showing what the difference between an assault weapon and a regular gun is. I have a gun with a beautiful wood stock. You pull the trigger once, only one bullet can come out at a time. And it's perfectly legal for me to have after this ban. If I take off that wood stock and put on a polymer stock, it now becomes an assault weapon by their definition, and I'm a criminal. It has a pistol grip, which means I can control it better, which I would think even gun haters would like, but they don't like that. So basically, with one thing, I'm a criminal. With a wood stock, I'm okay. With that, I stay in my home. Here, I will go to jail for 90 days per occurrence. Now, I knew most people would not comply with this. I don't know how many thousands of people are in non-compliance of this ridiculous law. No one's come out publicly and said, I'm in non-compliance. And I understand that. Who's going to risk being a possible victim of this, of having somebody bust into your house with a search warrant, take your guns, confiscate them to be destroyed, charge you $1,000 plus 90 days per every one you do? But somebody had to stand up and say, let it be me. So stupidly, it's let it be me. And I say stupidly, yeah, you say that. You say that now. Let's see if you visit me in jail. And my poor daughter, who was 15 at the time when this happened, went to school and got ganged up by a bunch of girls who said her father is a murderer, how dare you do this? She comes home in tears. Out of all the stupid things I've done for political causes, I've never had something hit my kids where they live. And it just hit me about how hypocritical and hateful Boulder is. This place that says no place for hate, hates people like me for my political beliefs and what is core to my belief structure. Now, I was never going to get rid of those guns. It was never going to happen. The only question is, do you do it publicly or do you do it privately? So everyone in Boulder now is going to be teaching their kids how to be criminals behind closed doors. Don't tell anybody. Started off this conversation saying that a consensual relationship is a beautiful thing. People getting together voluntarily is key. Forget about the Second Amendment for a second. What is it that they want to do in Boulder? They want to stop us from being there. They want us gone. They want to make it uncomfortable so we don't live there. They want us looking over our shoulders. Let me make the comparison to what gays had to go through. So there were lots of laws on the books that homosexuals had to deal with that were rarely enforced, but were always there, including a law saying if you weren't married, you couldn't stay at the same hotel room. All sorts of laws that still were in effect up until a year or two ago. Why? So that if they wanted to, they could hassle you. So that you're looking over your shoulder. So you're not meeting up with the same type of degenerates that are like you. Well, now in Boulder, if you have a so-called assault weapon and you want to go shooting with it, what do? Go to the Boulder Rifle Club and there's cops there who are also training. Am I going to pull out an AR-15 and shoot? Knowing that they could say, I'm sorry, where's your permission slip for that? It's been grandfathered in. So what it does over time is it separates us from our community. Boulder keeps talking about inclusivity, about acceptance, about welcoming. But what they're doing is separating people, and it's no accident. Now, They tried to do gun control on the federal level. It backfired and gave them the first Republican Congress in 50 years. They tried to do it in the state level and cost them 3 Senate seats when they did it here in Colorado. So now they're coming in to do it on a local level. There are about 7 or 8 other cities that are poised to do this. They're waiting to see what happens with the lawsuits that are filing. We filed a federal lawsuit. Other groups have filed a state lawsuit. They're waiting mostly for the state action to happen before we can talk about the federal action. I won't go into all the detail on that. And for me, it's a political issue. It is an opportunity to show our opponents for what they are. They're hateful people that don't want ugly people like us in their lily white community. That's what it is. We are hated because of who we are. It's just that simple. And it's just that crazy. So I'm not going to comply with this. Every day I wake up and I don't know if this is the day that they're going to knock on the door. I've made it clear, I'm not going to hassle you. You can come, you can take it. And part of me says, just hurry up and do it, will you? Just get it done. Take my guns, destroy them, punish me, and let me get on with my life so I can have a life instead of just waiting here to decide whether or not you're going to do this. It's cruel, is really what it is. But they know what they're doing. And they have a game of incrementalism, and they're going to win. So I tell you what, let me open this up for some questions and answers. But let me leave you with this, that a citizen of the United States owning a gun is a scary thing only to people who don't believe in individual empowerment. People who are anti-gun are anti-people because they don't trust people. It took me a long time to do the research to find out what guys like John Lott did with statistics showing how many guns save lives and stop crime. The work of Dave Kopel, finding out what really happened. And I look at this so-called assault weapon ban. All rifles put together cause about 4% of the homicides. 4%, of which so-called assault weapons are even a smaller category than that 4%. Something like 3 to 5 times more people are killed every year with baseball bats. So this is not about saving lives. It goes back to the very first statement. It's not about being safe. It's about feeling safe. But I think it's something worse. It's about disempowering individuals. Those of us who care about guns, we have enough guns for our lives. I will die and I'll have plenty of guns. The reason I'm doing this is for my kids and their kids and their kids. It was only within a lifetime ago that a whole continent was under siege in Europe because nobody had guns. I saw a meme today. It said, I saw a movie about how great it is when only the police and military have guns. It was called Schindler's List. And it really hit me. In a free society, if in fact power comes from us, then we need to be empowered with firearms. I'm not talking bazookas. I'm not going to go down that road like I used to go down when I was on the other side. But that's the citizenry we want. If you know somebody who should be one of us, take the time. Don't talk to them like a gun owner. Good God. Don't say, out of my cold, dead hands. What part of the Second Amendment don't you understand? Bumper stickers will not get anyone over to our side, particularly women. If you want to get you know what kind of gun your wife wants? You don't know what type of gun your wife wants. Let her pick out her own. Let her go to shoot several of them. Stay the hell away and let her talk to other women. I've known women that I never would have thought were gun owners, and they do this. It's kind of like the Trump voter. Yeah, I voted for Trump. You know, it's like, yeah, I got a gun at home. No, if we can change that to go, I've got a gun at home. You mean Sally has a gun? She's got a concealed gun. She seems so reasonable by every other thing. And then you find out, and Betty too, before you know it, it changes. I believe that gun ownership is a cultural indicator of where we are in Colorado. As I say over and over again, politics is a lagging indicator of change. and we all get into political stuff. Culture is the leading indicator. We need to change that, and I believe this is a pivot point, a fulcrum for many of us to change politics. So, and if you don't like guns, don't get one. I'm perfectly okay with that, but don't run me out of the town that I've been in nearly all my life. Don't run me out of the town where my daughter is buried. Don't run me out of a town where I had a small business. Don't run me out of a town where I was an elected official. That's hate. And I just, out of all this, all I want to do is show the world how intolerant, unaccepting, and bigoted these bastards are. With that, let me ask you if you have any questions.
Bill or law here in Colorado? The Extreme Risk Protection Order? Yeah.
Extreme Risk Protection. It is another, we don't understand how big Michael Bloomberg is. Michael Bloomberg basically did what is going on in Denver, or in Boulder. He did what the magazine bans that we have. It was him behind our universal background check system. By the way, I don't mind a universal background check system. I could find one acceptable. The system we have now in Colorado is arguably the worst in the country. Massachusetts has a more workable universal background check system. Massachusetts. I would gladly have what Massachusetts has. What is this? It is to make sure that people fall through the cracks so we can get them and their guns. The red flag bill, the same. Last year there was a flawed red flag bill. I don't mind the idea of finding some sort of due process so that if someone is in danger, we can make them safe. But getting back to the theme, anti-gunners don't want to be safe, they want to feel safe. So Mike is going crazy, as he often does. We know he's a danger. What do? We don't take him away, we take his guns away. As if he doesn't have a car or access to other guns or access to anything else. We take his guns away. But also, I always ask myself, more and more every day, what happened to good liberals? When I was a kid, I remembered all the time. I watched Norman Lear shows and all the rest, and now all the liberals said the same things. Due process. Where's the due process? You're innocent until you're proven guilty. And my favorite one, the ends don't justify the means. Today's hardcore radicals, the ends justify everything. So under this new red flag law, which will pass, they'll twerk it, it'll make it better, but it'll still be far less than what was proposed last year, which was even worse, or excuse me, which was bad enough. This one's even worse. We can take away Mike's guns with relative ease. He won't know about it until just before we take away his guns. It'll be in 14 days he has to have, if he wants it, a hearing to get his guns back. By the letter of the law, burden of proof is on Mike. He has to, it is his responsibility now to prove to the courts he is not a danger. So he can't even face his accuser. He doesn't have the right to cross-examine his accuser under this bill. If he has a concealed weapons permit, that gets yanked the day his guns are yanked. And even if he is successful in getting his guns back, and they found out it was all just a retribution plot, he still doesn't get his concealed weapons permit back. He has to go through all the time and trouble to get it back. It is a law that any good liberal would scream, we believe in due justice. We believe in innocence until proven guilty. We believe the ends don't justify the means. This law does all the opposite of that. And so when I see how the progressives are latching onto this, it tells me that it's changed. I just keep asking, where are the good liberals? What happened to them? They're out there. There were those who fought for due process. I don't see them any longer, and it's terrifying. Yes, ma'am.
Have you had any luck convincing somebody who was anti-gun, and how did you do that?
What a great question. The same way I ask women out on dates, I just keep nagging them and nagging them and nagging them. And Actually, an African-American friend of mine, he's a little bit older than I am, came from a pretty anti-gun, he's a professional, very anti-gun, and over the course of the last 2 years, a couple weeks ago, we went out and bought him his first Glock. He wanted to do it the same way, which was to get him to talk about it and drop a couple of those questions. The key is you will never convert somebody with a bumper sticker. You will never convert somebody by talking our language. We have to talk their language. And the one that finally, he was very much into African-American studies and the American black experience. And finally it hit me while we were talking, and I said, I'm sorry. We were going through some black history stuff. I don't know why any black man in America doesn't own a gun. And he was like, well, that's a good point. And I finally said to him, I tell you what, let's take away all the guns. Let's take away the guns from the black guys. Let's take guns away from the white guys. And then I looked at him. When we do that, you realize the man is still going to have all the guns. He got that. He got that. And that was the first step into thinking about this. And then finally, the big thing is, my wife said it's okay for me to get a gun now. Because he has 2 daughters, and the wife was concerned about home protection as well. Wow. Imagine if we did that more and more. I was on NRA TV, and so when I did this little video, you'll notice I don't know if I say this on the, no, I'll say it on the recording. So I made sure that there's a picture of my kids there. I made sure that there's the marriage equality sign there. Why? Because I'm talking to people who are not like me. And I saw the guy who was on after me. They did some Skype thing, and it was a guy who was standing there with a bill cap, beard, and he had the American flag kind of crinkled up, hanging behind him. And that's all right for guys like me, but the guys in the middle see that, and they see the terrorist with the Islamic flag behind them, holding an AR-15 or an AK-47. It scares them. My big message for gun owners: stop scaring the normal people. You have to soften this up so they can get it. You have to speak in their language. And for progressives, that language is usually about oppression versus oppressors. 20 years after Matthew Shepard's death, could it have been a different story if Matthew Shepard was armed? Would he be a martyr today? I don't know. But there are more people like us than you know, but you have to talk in a way that they understand. And I don't know how any of them can look at what Boulder is doing in that bigoted way and say, yep, that's the America I looked for. An America where we make people stand out, we ridicule them, and we make sure that they cannot associate with people like them in hopes that they leave our town. That's the new left. It's a great question. Sir?
I'm going to do something I hate, which is I'm going to make a little bit of a comment instead of asking a question, but then I'll make it a question.
I hate that too.
Asking what you think. Sure. I think there's one element missing in your take so far, which is that it's not just that they want to feel safe, but they also claim to feel unsafe, but they don't really act that way. To specifically refer to the example you gave with the group of girls standing up here and dropping on your daughter, if you really were a dangerous mass murderer, they would have been too scared to do that. The fact that they felt courageous enough to go bully your daughter like that means they aren't really afraid of you. And that's why they're picking on you.
I saw a meme of Spock, and Spock's big in my life, and it just said, logic dictates if gun owners were as dangerous as anti-gunners think, there would be no anti-gunners. No, it's true. And I want to put their faith to a test. And they say, oh, I don't really want to disarm people. And you go, well, what's wrong with this? And when you show them that the gun is just it's just a pistol grip. Same gun, pull the trigger once, only one bullet comes out. And then you realize it's not guns that kill people in Boulder, it's pistol grips that kill people. And even anti-gunnies have to look at that and go, all right, that's kind of stupid. But it takes a lot to dial back the panic. And I know this because I was one of them. And it's embarrassing to say I was one of them, but I remember it so well. I remember one day there was a shooting up back where I used to shoot. There was a guy who escaped from the jail up in Boulder. Maybe some of you remember this. I forget his name. And he actually went up to two guys who were shooting in a canyon up in Boulder where everybody would shoot. And he said, no, I'm an off-duty cop. Give me your guns. These two young guys were so stupid that they did, because you're always thinking, am I in trouble now for what I'm doing? You're always looking over your shoulder to get hassled when you're a gun owner. He shot them and killed them and went on a rampage. And it was sad, but also it was interesting that a lot of the people up in that area started moving over to the homes of people they knew had guns until the guy was caught. So when that happens, we have a veneer. I am convinced if we have people with guns, we'll never need a revolution. I think once you start taking away guns, at some point we're on a path where we're no longer in control. Not now, but in 100 years from now. Sure?
The previous, was the new law in Boulder, can you be grandfathered in, or is that cool?
You could be grandfathered in. In order for me to be grandfathered in, I needed to take any gun that I had by the end of last year, bring it, I have to self-identify. Now imagine if we did this for people who were gay or had a different religious faith like Muslim. I had to go up and self-identify. Hi, I'm different than everybody else. I had to go to the police, bring my weapon for inspection, pay for another background check, pay for a permission slip that I'm supposed to keep with the gun, and then I would be allowed to have what I already own. In order to keep what I own, I have to go self-identify, be investigated, open my gun up for inspection, and pay twice. And well, they say, well, it's not on any database. No, please. Please, every government check they process is a database. And I mean, I feel sorry for these cops. They don't want to do this. I mean, this is not what they want to do. They're good guys. I refuse to do that. I said, I'm not going to stand out like that, like so many other people. I knew a lot of guys who were gun owners. And one guy said, I had a temporary restraining order. I've got 8 guns that fall into this category, so I better go do this, and because I don't want to be afoul of the law. We're law-abiding people. So there was an out, but still, if I want to give my gun to my kid when she's old enough, I can't. I can't transfer it. I can't sell it. I can't buy another one. So I'm going to buy another one. I want to. I don't know how many of you are gun owners, but how many of you have more than one gun? How many of you have enough guns? All right. Yeah. All right, let me rephrase. You never have enough guns. Let me try it this way. How many of you have enough guns that if you never had another one, you'd make it to the end of your life with some guns to spare? Yeah, most of you. Here's the movement I want to start, and I'll write a column about this at some time in the future. I want to start a movement called Give a Gun. Back to your question, which is, I don't have enough guns by any measure, but I'm going to give one of my guns to someone who's never owned a gun. I'm going to give them a gun. Now, they'll still have to go through the background check, and I'd like them to go get trained, and I'll help them with that. But the idea for an anti-gunny, when I was making that step over, buying a gun is intimidating. How do you do it? Which one do you buy? Where do you go to shoot? How do you do this? How do you clean it? I don't know anything about this. It's intimidating. You guys who were raised with guns, it might not be any big deal, but there's so many questions. I want to start a movement that once a year, people who have guns buy a gun and give it to someone who's never had a gun. Walk them through the process. The problem is, you're gun owners, and you're like, nobody's going to take my damn gun. Well, no, don't give it. Find that person and give it. Good God, look how old you are. You're going to be dead in a year and a half anyway. Just give them a gun. And imagine, I would love to start that as a movement so that it becomes something that helps gun owners talk to those people who should be gun owners. Get them through. I mean, the guy I helped buy his first Glock. Here's how you shoot it. Here's how you take it apart. Here's how you do it. I gave him, here's some extra ammo. Here's an extra magazine. Here's a pistol rug for you. The kind of stuff. Yes.
Why don't you start a nonprofit that like faster trained teachers? There's college students who turn 21 every single year. They go to campus, and usually there's like tables with different organizations like the Young Camp.
That's a beautiful idea. I've thought about organizing it that way. Believe it or not, my bandwidth isn't quite large enough to do all that yet. I'd like to try it first with one gun, see what happens, then do more. I would love to get to the point where a gun manufacturer actually helps people buy their first gun at a huge discount through people, not gun dealers, but through individuals who can help them, particularly women, get that gun. Because I think it is just a remarkably powerful thing. Yeah, well, that's a great idea. I'd love to sit there next to PETA and everybody else. And we're giving away free guns to college students. Yes. Yes. The Bank of Boulder used to give away hunting rifles. And they did it, they got a huge amount of business. If you gave them X amount of money and a CD, they would send you a hunting rifle. Hot damn. All right, by comparison, Faster Training, the Faster organization, is actually under our umbrella at Independence. And we do now, it took forever to get a raffle license to do raffles. So if you go to Independence Institute, if you go to fastercolorado.com, and for 25 bucks you can get a chance to win a Glock. So I put that on, last time I put it on my Facebook page, it got taken down because it violated their community standards. So in other words, the tolerant people can't tolerate us. And so this money going raised for a charity is something they don't like, and that's where it goes. Sure.
It's a question out of ignorance, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Then I shall answer it out of ignorance.
So, why don't gun owners with this assault on our rights and constitutional desires of state, local, federal government, violate our constitution? Why have gun owners not pursued protected status?
I think that's kind of what I'm trying to do with how I'm framing this.
Could you repeat the question?
The question was, why don't gun owners try to get protected status? And I think in a place like Boulder, now that it is so intolerant, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. Saying that if you're going to protect the Muslim who's coming, if you're protecting the immigrant who went over the wall, if you're protecting the man in a dress, wait a second. This is a core belief I have. Let me tell you, this is right down into the soul of who I am in my belief structure. But you're telling me, in order for you to have that belief, you need to leave. I think we should not be hesitant because it calls them to live up to their own standards. I couldn't agree more. And I'm trying my best, and I'd like to get gun owners better trained to talk to people who aren't gun owners, using the language of non-gun owners. And that's a difficult thing for us. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Now, I think you make a great point on the feelings part of it. That drives so much of the progressive subject. But in tying the ends in Bloomberg, the end, I believe, is not to take out the Second Amendment. The end is to take out the First Amendment.
Yep.
We got to understand that.
When getting back to the point that I made, that this is about my ability to be with the people who are like me. That's a First Amendment issue. Freedom of association is a First Amendment issue. For me to be able to say, I believe this way without getting kicked off a platform, that's a First Amendment issue. If I want to say, I'm a gun owner and I want to live this life, that is a First Amendment issue. And I think I think you're dead on. We need to talk about this in a First Amendment way. David Lane, who is my defense attorney, if you know David Lane, he is the guy who has cost more money to cities for taking away people's First Amendment rights. So as soon as Boulder arrests me, he will be there to defend me. So this is an ACLU, very liberal lawyer. But you're absolutely right. This is a First Amendment issue, maybe even more so than a Second Amendment issue. That's me right here. Yeah.
I'll go to your legal defense fund.
Oh, so we have a funding platform for the same reason. A lot of things get kicked off of GoFundMe because they're not politically correct. We have freedomfy.com, freedomfy.com, and I said, can I get $7,500 for legal, for bail money, for daycare for my 2 kids, whatever I need during this. We've raised $12,000 so far, and hopefully I'll never need it, and I can give it away to good gun causes. But people get it. You had a question, sir.
Minor technical point, if you're going to give this speech elsewhere, the Boulder Rifle Club is in the county.
Right, not in the city. But many of its members are in the city. And the police also train there. Right. And also I shoot in my backyard a lot, so.
Now I have to edit this thing.
Pat.
Don't you think a lot of this has been the responsibility of the media? That the media has everybody frightened, that until we change the media.
The media hates guns because most of the people who work in the media are emotionalistic and despise the Second Amendment. We at the Independence Institute have done a pretty good job, back when you can know that a reporter is going to stay there for a little while, training them on at least the right language to use. During the gun debates of 2013, they were calling magazines clips, they were calling fully automatics, semi-automatics. I mean, they were just, they didn't know simple stuff. And it's maddening for those of us who know this. And you realize that people don't know what the hell they're talking about. When Congresswoman Diana DeGette said, when asked, well, what about all these magazines after, what are you going to do with all the magazines that are already out there? And she said, well, once they're used up, they'll get thrown away. And so I did a little video, and to Diana, this poor woman's cracking up on that. So I took a Pez dispenser and I said, no, Diana, it's kind of like this. You eat all the candy and then you fill it back up. It doesn't, but they don't know this. And we shouldn't expect them to know this. They don't have to know this. But if they're going to take away what it is, you think maybe they ought to figure that out. And that's why one of my biggest pet projects is getting on public radio. And I mean not getting on so they can hear me, but getting on their backs. Because I believe a lot of people who are persuadable listen to NPR. And NPR is one of the most vicious, progressive indoctrination machines I've ever seen. That's why I call them, I write them, here at Colorado Public Radio, and I said, I can't believe you said this. They hate me. And they're good people, it's just that there's no diversity. Because in their world, diversity is what's between your legs. Diversity is not what's between your ears. And so not one person on that staff voted for Trump. 45% of Coloradans voted for Trump. Not one person on the news staff at CPR voted for Trump. But yet, they're going to be diverse? That ain't diverse. I mean, they've got the gay guy, they got the black chick, they got this woman, they got that. They got it all. But there's no diversity. And so I think we need to stay on them. And also go to CompleteColorado.com. I hope you all do that every day. CompleteColorado.com is the one-stop shop for all political news in Colorado. And it's like Drudge Report, and you don't have to pay for it. It's wonderful. I'm going to just take one more question if you have it, and then you can watch me get drunk.
Real quick, your analogy on the left sort of coming from feelings. It's so true. It's like we come sort of fact-based. Just your advice on having a conversation or trying to explain a point. When they're coming from feelings, I don't speak that language very well. It's like, what's the best practice there?
If there is one book that I can recommend, and I'm dyslexic, I don't know how to read books, And so, I mean, people give me books, and thank you so much for the book. But giving me a book is like giving a paraplegic some running shoes. I mean, so I have to listen to them on tape. And the best one I listened to is a very short book called The Three Languages of Politics. I think that's what it's called. Yeah. It was eye-opening for me.
What was it called again?
The Three Languages of Politics. Three Languages of Politics. It's like a 100-page book. And the idea, I'll give it to you in real brief synopsis. He puts us all into three, those of us who are political junkies, he puts us into three categories. You have progressives, you have libertarians, and you have conservatives. And they see the world on different spectrums. And so as a libertarian-minded guy, I see everything on a spectrum of liberty versus coercion. And that's the battle, that is the only battle I see. Progressives see a battle between oppressors and those who are oppressed. And when you start understanding that, that's why the social justice world to them makes perfect sense. They don't care that they're going to oppress other people in their path as long as they make up for this past oppression. It makes perfect sense to them. The biggest problem I had was with my friends who are social conservatives, because I've never understood how you can love freedom, but you need to have the drug war and you need to do all these other things. And for them, the spectrum is between an orderly society and chaos. So we have civility versus chaos. And for their point of view, we go, fine, you libertarians are wonderful, but wait till society breaks down and there's no order. So you could look at something like Black Lives Matter. And for this group, they're saying, no, you need that for order in a civil society. You need police and law. And over here, they see the oppressors. No, police are oppressing black people, so they see it the other way. And people are here going, why are we giving the police machine guns? And so we see it different ways. You will never. There was a kid who works in my office, and God, I hate kids, particularly when they're right. And he said, people who are emotional, they will never be able to talk to somebody who's fact-based. People who are fact-based will never be able to talk to somebody who's emotional. So you have to make these, you have to have stories. You need villains, you need heroes, you need to make it an emotion, and you need to not do it with stats. I swear, our whole movement is, if only we show them the right graph, we're going to win. And that never happens. And this is the perfect issue to try it on, because it is a black and white issue. People are emotionalistic, and you can see it in their eyes. So my challenge for you is to find that one person who is anti-gun that shouldn't be, and see if you can move them over the course of time, slowly. But a Republican, yeah, but a Republican, yeah. No, you don't give guns to Democrats. Yeah. Hey, thank you all very much for putting up with me. I really appreciate it.